Hello everyone. Today, we students from the Department of Life Sciences will be talking about the International Year of Plant Health. Every year, the United Nations make a point of promoting something in our lives that warrants attention. For 2020, the UN declared this year as the International Year of Plant Health. Today, we'll be talking about the objectives of the International Year of Plant Health. Second, we'll be talking about why the UN decided to dedicate the year 2020 to the plant health. Third, we'll be talking about International Plant Protection Convention. And lastly, we'll be talking about the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations.
The objectives are raising awareness of the importance of healthy plants for achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Next, highlighting the impact of plant health on food security and ecosystem functions. And the last one, sharing best practices on how to keep plants healthy while protecting the environment.
Why UN has dedicated this year for plant health and why plant health is important. Plants make up to 80% of the food we eat and produce 98% of the oxygen we breathe. Yet they are under constant and increasing threat from pests and diseases. Every year, up to 40% of the global food crops are lost due to plant pests and diseases. This leads to annual agricultural trade losses over $220 billion, leaves millions of people facing hunger and severely damages agriculture, the primary income source for poor rural communities. Climate change and human activities are altering ecosystem and reducing biodiversity and creating conditions where pests can thrive. At the same time, international travel and trade has tripled in volume in the last decade and can quickly spread pests and diseases around the world, causing great damage to native plants and in the environment. UN General Assembly has declared 2020 as the International Year of Plant Health. The year is a once in a lifetime opportunity to raise global awareness on how protecting plant health can help and end hunger, reduce poverty, protect the environment, and boost economic development.
Let's now talk about the International Plant Protection Convention. Now, what is International Plant Protection Convention or IPPC? The IPPC is a multilateral treaty signed under the auspices of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO. The purpose of the IPPC is to prevent the spread and introduction of pests of plant and plant products and to promote appropriate measures for their control. This you see is the entire structure of the IPPC. The implementation of the IPPC involves collaboration of national plant protection organizations and regional plant protection organizations. The convention creates two bodies, the Secretariat, who coordinates the core activities and provides operational support to the IPPC work program, and the Commission on Phytosanitary Measures, the CPM, which serves as the International Plant Protection Convention's main governing body while also being a FAO statutory body. For the year 2020, the Commission on Phytosanitary Measure agreed on the following strategic objectives. First one, protecting sustainable agriculture and enhancing global food security through the prevention of pest spread. Second, protecting the environment, forest and biodiversity from plant pests. Third, facilitating economic and trade development through the promotion of harmonized scientifically based phytosanitary measures. And fourth, developing phytosanitary capacity for members to accomplish the preceding three objectives. The core activities of the CPM are to set international standards, dispute settlement, and information exchange. International standards for the phytosanitary measures are standards adopted by the CPM. As of December 2019, there are 42 adopted international standards. Talking about dispute settlement, IPPC dispute avoidance and dispute settlement system provides a flexible informal forum for dispute avoidance. Governments have the sovereign right to dispute the phytosanitary measure that they believe are unjustified. Information exchange, sharing information on regulation, pest outbreaks, control, surveillance, and treatment build cooperation, and enhances member countries' capacity to protect their plant resources. The CPM Bureau, Standard Committee, Strategic Planning Group, and the Implementation and Capacity Development Committee are the administrative bodies of the CPM. The CPM Bureau provides guidance to the IPPC Secretariat on activities, particularly those related to financial and operational management. The Standard Setting Committee's primary role include overseeing the IPPC standard setting process and to develop international standards. Implementation and the Capacity Development Committee is the subsidiary body of the CPM which develops, monitors, and oversees an integrated program to support the implementation of the IPPC and strengthens the phytosanitary capacity of the contracting parties. Lastly, the Strategic Planning Group. The purpose of the Strategic Planning Group is to provide strategic perspective to the work of the IPPC and to support improvement through the provision of recommendations and advice to the CPM on any issue which has been referred. Contracting parties recognize their obligations under the treaty and work together to reduce the risk of pests being exported, ensuring that any requirements are technically justified and have a minimum impact on the international trade. Lastly, by protecting plant resources from pests and diseases, the IPPC helps protect farmers from economically devastating pests and diseases outbreaks, protect the environment from loss of species diversity, protect ecosystem from loss of viability and function as a result of pest invasions, protect industries and consumers from the cost of pest control or eradication.
The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. On 2nd December 2019, the Food and Agriculture Organization, that is the FAO, launched the United Nations International Year of Plant Health for 2020, which aims to raise global awareness on how protecting plant health can help end hunger, reduce poverty, protect the environment, and boost economic development. FAO and its International Plant Protection, that is the IPPC, which leads activity to make the year a success as well as promote plant health beyond 2020. The year will emphasize prevention and protection and the role everyone can play to ensure and promote plant health. The key objectives of the year are raising awareness of the importance of plant health for achieving the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, highlighting the impact of plant health on food security and ecosystem functions, and sharing best practices on how to keep plants healthy while protecting the environment. By preventing the spread and introduction of pests into new areas, governments, farmers, and other actors of the food chain, such as the private sector, can save billions of dollars and ensure access to good quality food. FAO and its International Plant Protection Convention are already leading global efforts, for example, to ensure the international standards for phytosanitary measures are developed to sustain plant health and countries to benefit from the worldwide application. The General Director of FAO said, plants provide the core basis for life on Earth, and they are the single most important pillars of the human nutrition. But healthy plants are not something that we can take for granted.
Lastly, to conclude, I would like to say that we all have a role to play in maintaining the plant health. Everyone needs to avoid taking plant products with them when traveling across borders. People in transportation industries need to make sure that ships, airlines, trucks, and trains don't carry plant pests and disease into new areas. And lastly, governments need to increase their support to national and regional plant protection organizations.
Hello everyone. So we'll be talking on plant pest. A pest is any animal or plant which is harmful to human or human concern. The term in particularly is used for creatures that damage crops, livestock and forestry or cause a nuisance to people, especially in their homes. Humans have modified the environment for their own purposes and are intolerant to other creatures occupying the same space when the activities impact adversely on human objectives. In this PPT, we'll be seeing how different aspects affect plant pests.
There's an acceleration in the introduction of new species to an area, largely due to accidental introduction due to globalization. A species is said to be invasive when it is introduced to a new region, establishes itself in that region successfully, spreads beyond the established area, and causes an imbalance in the local ecosystem and is generally a source of worry. The bridgehead effect is used to describe invasive populations which act as a source for more invasive species. Sub-Saharan African countries are most vulnerable to invasions and pests. This is because these countries do not have diverse industrial outputs. Therefore, if a pest hits the industry that sustains their entire economy, it will have a huge negative impact on the country. Researchers have also identified the US and China as the largest potential contributors to pests due to their massive amounts of trade exports. A good example of a case study of pest transmission is that of the Asian longhorn beetle, which entered the US from China despite there being very stringent wood packaging protective regulations. The ethyl bromide treatment was not sufficient enough, and the shipment from China contained live beetles. Another example is that of the pinewood nematode, which kills coniferous trees. This nematode spread to Japan, Taiwan, and Korea. Europe imposed a heat treatment certification for coniferous wood from America. However, exports declined and huge losses were seen. And despite all these regulations, a case was seen in Portugal. Quarantining, border control, checking by officials, etc. are all therefore very important to prevent pest transmission.
With increase in technology and research globally, communicating with neighbor countries is necessary for conducting available help. The worldwide transport and trade has increased the potential spread of invasive species of pests, making it a challenge. In the global species pool, it's a major challenge for national biosecurity. Inbound domestic passengers and trade companies can be a backup for ecological disturbance, which have been identified as a reason of species invasion. Miami had the greatest percentage, approximately 21.8% of insect interception, indicating that it receives a significant number of insect pests, and it would be a point of entry to pests entering the neighboring states or country. It has been estimated that invasives cost the USA some $120 billion a year, with over 100 million acres suffering from invasive infestation. Tourism is one of the pathways through which alien species have spread in the biodiversity hotspot. Biological invasions are probably the most significant environmental threat to maintenance of natural forest ecosystems in North America and elsewhere. The increase in introduction of exotic organisms generally has resulted in a substantially greater number of pests. Increasing load of pest species are likely to result in large and long-term impacts on forest ecosystems. In North America, gypsy moth caused a catastrophic tree mortality. In 1930, a release of a parasitoid wasp in Kulu Valley resulted in 98% suppression of pests, causing the attack on the roots, after which plants looked sick and it even died. To prevent it, it requires special attention, planning for eradication, and monitoring. All these need to be followed.
Crops are vulnerable to damage by various pests. There is a constant tussle between farmers and pests since most control measures either have limited efficiency or they have side effects such as destroying other harmless organisms. The maintenance of crop health is vital, and thus several methods have been devised and used to keep pests in check. Broadly, these are biological methods, for example, maintaining a ladybird population to control aphids. Microbial pesticides consist of microbial agents which deter pests such as biofungicides like trichoderma. Chemicals are used which can modify the behavior of pests. Modern genetic-based technologies using CRISPR and transgenic crops which express substances toxic to insect pests are being employed. And finally, plant immunization, which involves activating the natural defense systems in plant using certain agents.
During the last 4 decades, there have been major advances in food grain production in India due to the adoption of Green Revolution technology, which included high-yielding varieties and intensive use of chemical fertilizers and pesticides. Use of high-yielding varieties, chemical fertilizers, and pesticides have invited several new pest problems along with deterioration of soil health and environment, which are currently being added with climate change and global warming. In major agricultural crops, pests, diseases, and weeds cause considerable yield loss every year in India, which accounts for 30 to 40% of it. Climate change in terms of increased temperature, elevated carbon dioxide, and erratic rainfall leading to drought, flood, submergence, salinity situations have direct and indirect effects on the crop pest. Increased temperature and rainfall directly affect the crop pest, whereas the elevated carbon dioxide have indirect effects on these pests through host or the quality of the food material produced by the plant. During both the circumstances, life activities of the crop pests are affected. Indirect effects of climate change on crop pests, pest growth and development, reproduction and survival, and indirect effects break down in temperature sensitive host plant resistant. Even the plant defense systems are lowered under stress, making them more susceptible to plant pest attack. It is now becoming increasingly clear that climate change is affecting virtually all aspects of life, and one alarming dimension is the growth in number of insect pests that are threat to food security, particularly in developing economies such as India. Vital to ecosystem and humans, insect pollinate crops and flowers, provide food for higher level organisms, break down the detritus, maintain a balance in ecosystem by eating the leaves of plants, and help recycle the nutrients in the soil. However, they also consume somewhere between 18 to 26% of the crop which is produced around the world, which is valued up to 470 billion USD. And insects are cold-blooded organisms. The temperature of the body is approximately same as that of environment. Due to global warming, when the temperature changes and also the relative humidity with more rain, less humid days, the sucking pest in particularly will increase. Also, due to changes in climate in hilly terrains, there will be an upward movement in insect population. Insects burn calories at a faster clip when the surroundings heat up, forcing them to eat more. Elevated levels of carbon dioxide can increase levels of simple sugars in leaves and lower the nitrogen content. These can increase the damage caused by many insects, which will consume more leaves to meet the metabolic requirements of nitrogen. In India, there are cases available to show several minor pests which have been cause of a major problem due to change in environmental practices and climatic variability. For example, the brown plant hopper in case is a point. It was a minor pest attack on rice on economic significance till its outbreak in Kerala in 1973-74. Infestation of brown plant hopper in basmati and non-basmati rice in western Uttar Pradesh, Haryana and Delhi are some of the recent examples.
In conclusion, we examine the causative factors behind pest transmission and invasion. It is critical that in future we execute checks to prevent the spread of invasive pests which could potentially destroy the agriculture and economy of a country and has far-reaching effects, particularly during this era of globalization. Additionally, climate change could further exacerbate this issue, and it is therefore imperative that we understand more via research and put in place strategies as well as policies to combat the same efficiently.
Hello everyone, this is Maria D'Souza from the Department of Life Sciences, and today our group is going to present on the topic Zero Hunger, Reduce Poverty and Save Farmers. So before starting with this presentation, I would like to walk you through the points we will be covering today. Firstly, we will talk about zero hunger, which reflects on the wastage of food and due to it how malnutrition occurs, and also about the various sustainable food systems. Secondly, we will talk about poverty and what measures are to be taken to reduce it. And then lastly, we will talk about the increasing rate of farmers' suicide cases and the reasons behind it. So first, Zero Hunger. The Zero Hunger Challenge was launched by the United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon in 2012. The Zero Hunger vision reflects 5 elements which, when put in practice together, can end hunger and eliminate all forms of malnutrition and also help build sustainable food systems. It is also known as the 2030 Agenda. Now, talking about food wastage, which is one of the eliminate under this, the estimated amount of food that goes to waste per year is around 125 to 160 billion. And the reasons behind it may be due to climatic conditions, manufacturing problems, overproduction, poor planning, and the main reason is leftover or uneaten food. Now, as per the research, it is said that India spends approx rupees 1.5 lakh crore on food and agriculture, and from that around 92.6 crore incurs loss. Reducing the food wastage by even 15% could feed more than 25 million people. The FAO, that is the Food Agriculture Organization, also states that in India more than 40% food is wasted. Now, wastage can even be of two types. One is food loss, which can be due to unpredictable situations, and other is wasted knowingly. Now in Delhi, there are Safal outlets which says that around 18 kgs of food is disposed on daily basis, and among that disposed food, a very good amount is actually edible. So these Safal outlets actually help to promote another challenge under the Zero Hunger Initiative, which states that adequate food should be there for people throughout. Now, why does this happen? The main problem with the Indian food supply chain is lack of transparency between the government and producers and the consumers, and also the insufficient storage facilities in some remote parts. Now, the Zero Hunger Challenge also promotes that one must adapt all food systems to minimize the wastage. For example, reduce the amount of food being produced as per the need, reuse the food, as in food that has crossed the expiry date and cannot be donated or given out can be composted or given to centers to convert it into biofuels, etc. Recycling of extra food, donating it to the food banks, charity organizations, and even in some areas like Kochi, Chennai, they make use of community fridges. So in this picture, we can see how much amount of food is wasted in different sectors, and no wonder due to such wastage, malnutrition cases are increasing. Malnutrition, which is again one of the major challenges under the initiative, will now be covered by Rini.
Hello everyone, my name is Rini Shetty and I will be talking about malnutrition in India. Malnutrition is a global problem and a serious condition. It is the main cause of death and disease in the world, and it occurs when the body does not get enough nutrition. It also leads to serious health problems including stunt growth, eye problems, diabetes and heart rate. Some of the factors responsible for malnutrition are mother's nutritional status, women's education, sanity, illiteracy, large family size, family instability, and poverty. About a third of Indians are believed to be malnourished, and over 40% of children receive less food than they should. In India, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, and Assam has the highest malnutrition levels in the country. Improvements in nutritional status have not kept pace with the reduction in poverty, and the current level of malnutrition is unacceptably high. Despite a fast-growing economy and the largest anti-malnutrition program, India has the world's worst level of child malnutrition. The government plans to pump in rupees 1,23,580 crore over the next 5 years to tackle the problem. Although the government of India is increasing food subsidies to address the situation, But the rapidly rising population and increasing proportion of the population living in the urban areas are causing continuing issues. The following topic will be covered by Amanda.
Hello everyone, I'm Amanda Abbas and I'm going to be talking about the reduction of poverty in India. So poverty is one of the major issues in India and 70% of the farmers in the rural areas witness this throughout the year. The government has taken certain initiatives to resolve the issue, but welfare funding does not always cure or address the root cause of poverty. It only treats symptoms. The root cause of poverty is lack of skills and economic opportunities. As you know, the farmers have been protesting against the 3 farm bills. The bill includes the farmers to sell their produce outside the Agricultural Produce Market Committee. Now, these markets are being controlled by the government, which means that they can buy the farmers' produce at a mutually low agreed price, and the produce is further sold in the markets at a higher price, which leads the farmers to an immense price loss. As nearly 3/4 of Indian families depend on rural incomes, the maintenance of the farms, the cost of the seeds and fertilizers are comparatively high than the selling price of the crops. And therefore, the farmers have been requesting to eradicate the farm bill so that they can sell their produce anywhere across the state or the country at a better price. Now let's move on to the initiatives that could be taken to resolve the issue. Agricultural programs should be held educating the farmers about technology and how it could be used in agriculture to increase their earning capacities. Agriculture has nearly half of 1.3 billion plus population depending on it for their livelihood, but the growth is slow, and at the same time, climate change might also threaten the crop production. The application of biotechnology can optimize the use of available resources without placing additional demands on land or water to boost crop yields. For example, farmers could be trained on micro-irrigation, micro-propagation, smart use of fertilizers, and better understanding of crop rotation. The credit, supply chain, marketing, and management sectors should be well organized. The government has already taken initiatives and policies have been made like the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, the National Food for Work Program, Jawahar Rozgar Yojana, and the Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana. However, these initiatives are not sufficient to alleviate the root cause of poverty. To kickstart the rural economy, we must formulate policies that focus on helping the people emerge from their existing problem. The farmers should be provided equal economic opportunities, employment, and education to curb the major problems causing poverty.
Hello everyone, my name is Aishwarya and I will be talking about farmer suicides in India, its causes and what can we do to reduce it. Now first, let's have a look at the statistics. According to NCRB report, every year more than 12,000 farmers in India commit suicide. In fact, 10% of all suicides in India are farmer suicides. There are 7 states in the country that account for 87.5% of farmer sector suicides. Among these, Maharashtra accounts for highest number of farmer suicides in the country and it has been like that since 2014. Unfortunately, a majority of farmers who died by suicide in India were men, while women accounted for only 8.6% of the farmer suicides in the country. One of the reasons for this wide discrepancy could be that a large number of women who work on farms are not actually considered as farmers. Let's have a look at why these farmers are committing suicide. It is found that majority of the farmers who commit suicide are small-scale farmers who doesn't own a lot of land, nor do they have enough money. So the major reason is issue related to change in weather and climate, lack of farm labor and awareness. Other reasons include inadequate storage facilities, poor quality of seeds, pesticides and fertilizers, lack of proper irrigation, absence of mechanization. They cannot maintain farm livestock, which owes them to increasing costs, not getting credit at good terms and conditions due to reluctance of commercial banks and insufficient transport facilities. Lastly, let's have a look at what can be done to prevent these farmers from committing suicide. Making institutional finance available to every farmer, particularly the poor farmers, reducing red tape in this regard, effective monitoring will ensure that the poor farmer actually gets the loan. Effective and timely counseling, providing the poor farmers with technological advancements in agriculture, advising these poor farmers to go on alternate sources of income and giving training for the same. The government too should try to pull lands of small farmers and convert them into bigger chunks of economically cultivable land. These measures can bring the farmers back from the brink of death. So let's try to help the farmers and make a better living for us all. Thank you.
Hello everyone. The topics we'll be covering in our presentation are trading plants, buying seeds online, and phytosanitation. It is necessary to highlight these points as the traditional occupation of India is agriculture. Agriculture is the primary source of livelihood for about 58% of Indians.
Plant trading. Plant trading offers you an assortment of ornament plants as big as possible, mostly provided by local nurseries known for their high quality products. What are its types? Types of plant that plant trader buy or sells are green indoor plants, flowering bearing indoor plants, fruit trees, forest trees, ornament trees, and scrubs. How to plant them? There are 7 steps to planting a tree that are land clearing, seedbed preparation, planting, weeding, fertilizer application, watering, mulching, and puring. In land clearing, this is an act of preparing the land for farming or cultivation of ornament plants. The next is seedbed preparation. Seedbed preparation can be done using a hoe, followed by making the surface flat and smooth. Planting. Before planting seeds, farmers prepare or till the soil using a variety of methods. Some turn over the soil with a spade, while others loosen with garden fork. Weeding. This is an act of removing unwanted plants growing where they are not wanted or planted. Fertilizer application. Not all soils have enough nutrients or right balance of nutrients. For this reason, farmers enhance soil fertility by adding fertilizer. Watering. Water is very useful for plants as it's for other organisms. The pressure of water within the plant cells helps to plant leaves to remain firm. Mulching. Mulching is an act of using some material on the soil to conserve the water and at the same time to control weed growth. Pruning. It is an act of trimming the vegetative plant parts to have good shape. Farmers also prune to remove damaged, disease, or dead branches. Advantage and scope in India of plant trading are: in India, the business offers excellent employment and good remuneration to small and marginal farmers. It offers higher profit than cereal farming and other crops, especially in Netherlands, Colombia. Ornaments are world trade.
Buying seed online with online seed sales provides many benefits for growers, from comparing products directly from your computer or smart device to buying best quality seeds at a discounted price. Many authentic sites are now available from where we can buy different varieties of seeds and can thereby start our own garden. There are some do's and don'ts that will make you a smarter shopper. Most common mistakes people make are overbuying. Seed packs are pretty cheap, so people tend to overbuy and store it for further reference. It is wrong. Although seeds can be stored and saved, eventually they lose much of their viability. The best germination rate occur on seeds that are packaged for the current year. Buying without regard to appropriate condition. Buying seeds on the merits of their beauty and without regard to the appropriate zone or conditions is a common but avoidable mistake. The photographs and the artwork you see in catalog are as good as it gets. They are grown under ideal conditions by professionals. In the garden of your mind, the seeds you plant will look just as good. But in reality, your true garden may have poor soil, pests, and possibly shades. Take these issues into consideration and order seeds and plants that are appropriate for your growing condition. What you should do: plan ahead. Do a little advanced planning. First, try to calculate how many plants you can realistically add to a given space. Find reliable catalog companies. Seed qualities can vary from one company to the next. In addition, freshness matters. Companies that offer bargain basement prices may be able to do so only because of inferior quality or stale seeds. Consider making your first order small. Start with a small order. You can always buy more. But don't bet your entire garden's success on an unknown company to supply the seeds. Make sure the seeds you are buying are fresh and packaged for that year. Deeply discounted seeds may be out of date, although still viable in many cases. They do begin to decline in their rate of germination success as they get older or stored improperly. Know if what you are ordering will grow in your zone. It is so easy to assume you'll get results like those in the picture. In reality, without just the right conditions, your results could vary greatly.
Now we'll be talking about SPS, that is, sanitary and phytosanitary. No country in this world is completely self-sufficient. In order to meet the food and the other needs of the citizens, countries usually import agricultural and horticultural produces from each other. Unfortunately, these imported agricultural and horticultural produces sometimes comes with pests and diseases, with which they have been associated in their home environment. And it becomes a pathway for introducing pests and diseases into the new environment. In order to prevent this from happening, so that the international trade takes place safely, a measure was put in place. Countries across the world came together under WTO, that is, World Trade Organization, to negotiate the SPS Agreement. SPS Agreement is stated as any measure applied to protect animal or plant health or health within the territory of the member from risks arising from the entry or the spread of the pest, diseases, or disease-carrying organisms. Therefore, there was a need to put plants under quarantine. These plant quarantine services are charged with the responsibility of preventing entry of hazardous pests, pathogens, and weeds. Therefore, the need of phytosanitary certificate arose. The phytosanitary certificate is used to certify that the domestic plants and plant products have been inspected according to appropriate procedure and they are considered to be free from pests. Here are a few takeaway points. Many plants are good alternative of many diseases. Go through do's and don'ts before buying seeds online. Take measures like products are exported from a disease-free area, inspection of products, specific treatment, or processing of the products are done accurately. As a citizen of India, it is our responsibility to create awareness and help our local farmers and traders so that international trade takes place safely. I sincerely appreciate your attention. Thank you.
Hello, we are going to discuss some reasons behind the rising malnourishment issue during the pandemic in our country and why it has led to stunted growth in children. We are aware as a nation that we are trying to curb this crippling issue since several years. The progress made so far is pulled back because of the lockdown that the pandemic brought. One of the reasons are the disruption of supply chains in the agricultural sector and lack of proper development in the rural areas. According to 2015 World Bank's estimation, around 176 million people live in poverty. That's a lot. The migration and movement restriction cause major demand and supply issues to farmers, leaving them and their families to starve. The per capita availability of food grains is comparatively less than the minimum international standard of 500 grams per person per day. Moreover, 23% of the villages in India till date are without primary health care centers. Therefore, catching these signs and symptoms of a malnourished child is nearly impossible. Even if abundant food grains and crops are produced and cultivated, 20% of it is spoiled or lost because of the limited and improper storage facilities. In the following picture, Manisha Uke, a farm worker, was feeding her 3 young girls rice and chutney with crushed onions and tomatoes ever since the imposed lockdown. How is rice and chutney supposed to meet the nourishing demands? And it is not only the ineffective food supply chains, but also food waste and inflation.
According to data released by the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, over 1,550 tons of food grains were found to be damaged in the Food Corporation of India godowns during the COVID-19 lockdown period in April and May, and nearly 26 tons of food grains were damaged in May, and over 1,453 tons were damaged in June. In a period when people have been dying of hunger, the price of the cereal and non-cereal food product had also increased during the lockdown and made it more difficult for Indian consumers, especially poor and jobless people, because they couldn't afford them. And on the other hand, there were reports of food dumped in rural area because of the lack of accessibility to marketplace for the sales. In Tamil Nadu, the farmers were expecting a good profit before lockdown, but the lockdown put them into a situation of huge loss in addition. The farmers who cultivated cotton, onion, flowers, banana, and other cash crops received a worst hit, while the paddy farmers were slightly scathed from the COVID-19 lockdown impact. Likewise, farmers cultivating bananas and those growing flowering plants also suffered huge losses, as the nature of their produce required timely sales. And as we know, banana is yearly crop. At many places, banana plantains had reached their harvesting stage, but the farmers in Tamil Nadu left banana bunches to ripen on the tree. Because of the lockdown and transport restriction, the grown harvest couldn't be transported to states like Kerala and many other places. Due to the lockdown, the farm's supplies to the market have been hit the hardest. Because of the lockdown was announced in the middle of the harvest season, and this forced us to stay indoors with no buyers, and the vegetables were rotting in the fields. And because of the vegetables and crops in the fields had spoiled, farmer had no option but to dump their produce. In Maharashtra, the agriculture produce rate had also fallen, as the farmer had no option but to dump their produce. We have seen many viral videos of grapes growing and vegetable growing farmers dumping their products. In Karnataka as well, tomato growing dumped their produce. In many states, the dairy farmers were seen pouring hundreds and thousands of liters of milk in the pond, river, and drains. But many farmers tried selling their vegetables near their villages at less price, but they did not make any profit. And the leftover unsold produce were fed to animal and cattle.
The lockdown had disastrous consequences on poor people, in particular those who lack the savings to survive without work. Since most of the families in the rural area depend on agriculture for survival, poor wages given to these farming laborers are not sufficient to meet the necessary demands. Hence, the youth from rural areas come to the urban area for seeking employment as a source of secondary income to support their family. The country-wide lockdown reduced economic activities and triggered large-scale unemployment. According to the International Labour Organization, nearly 4.1 million Indians have lost their jobs during the pandemic time. The pandemic has threatened India's food security, availability, access, stability, and utilization of resources. It has further intensified the existing problem of malnutrition among women and children. People since started purchasing less food, decreasing the number of meals, less nutritious meals. This phenomenon badly affected the children, hence amplifying the issues of malnutrition. The worst effect was on Indian migrant workers. Indian migrant workers during the COVID-19 pandemic have faced multiple hardships. As factories and workplaces shut down due to the lockdown imposed in the world, millions of migrant workers had to deal with the loss of income, food shortages, and uncertainty about their future. Due to this, many of them and their families, including children under the age of 5 and pregnant women, went hungry. Thousands of them began walking back home with no means of transport due to the lockdown. Migrant workers, majorly of daily wage laborers, working in the manufacturing and construction industries. Many of them migrate along with their wife and children for the work. They are often denied adequate healthcare, nutrition, housing, and sanitation. Since many of them work in formal sector, many have no savings. They completely depend upon the daily work. Since due to the lockdown, they have no work, no food for their daily survival. They struggled a lot, especially children suffered silently without proper nourishment. Due to the disruption of food supply chains, labor shortages, limited production, and restricted mobility have affected on pregnant women's food and nutrition consumption. For instance, a shortages of fruits, vegetables, meat, fish, eggs, etc. potentially compromise nutrient supply to pregnant women and new mothers who are responsible for the childbirth and nourishment. As a result, it increased the malnourishment among children. Though in India, children are not reported to be infected by COVID-19 in large numbers as yet, the pandemic has directly impacted child survival, health, and nutrition significantly due to the breakdown of economy. The ongoing pandemic has completely disrupted immunization services and delivery of nutritional supplements within few months, making children more vulnerable to other diseases and malnutrition.
The government of India already has effective schemes and programs like the Targeted Public Distribution Services, TPDS, the Midday Meal Services, and Integrated Child Development Services, that is ICDS, all covered under the National Food Security Act right from the year 2013. Likewise, during the pandemic, several changes were brought about in these schemes, which included provision of 5 kgs of rice or wheat per month, 1 kg of pulses per household, and home delivery of ration to the vulnerable population, all free of cost. Since schools were shut, the midday meal programs, which served as the primary source of supplementary nutrition for millions of school-going children in India, also suffered. A monthly survey conducted in Delhi in 2013 analyzed 876 midday meal samples, out of which 90% failed to meet the standards of 12 grams of proteins and 450 calories. A number of loopholes were reported in these schemes. It was hence necessary that nutritious food needs to reach the plates of these poor students, not just something cooked, in order to make sure proper nutritious levels to be met. Under the ICDS scheme or program, beneficiaries received grocery supplies and home-cooked food. About 87 lakh children under the age of 6 years benefited from this scheme. The state government on their part are also making efforts to maintain an uninterrupted supply of chain of food and vegetables to ensure distribution of take-home ration under the ICDS scheme. Various other programs where home-cooked food was served under the Integrated Child Development Scheme was also put into play to benefit children and women. On the other hand, strict measures were taken for allocation and distribution of additional food supply to the vulnerable population under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana. Some examples of these schemes are the Poshan Abhiyan. Finally, the use of new technology in service delivery, data management, evidence generation, and real-time monitoring helped in the process of distribution of this food. However, despite best intentions, temporary closure of many manufacturing units making such raw materials for distributing these foods, and since transportation of these commodities was brought us still across these regions, which was affecting severely. Even places where such dry ration is reaching, it is limited, and there is a very serious risk of it getting diverted away from children and women. Though almost 83% of ration card holders have received free grains from the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Yojana during these lockdown periods, a very few of non-ration card holders in rural India got any kind of food support. It was noted that in Uttar Pradesh, it was amongst the first states to announce a free ration for people who did not have ration cards under the PDS scheme. People who did not have ration cards or even Aadhaar cards were made eligible for such dry ration services. Delhi government started a system of e-coupons to enable those without ration cards to get free food during the lockdown period. However, activists say that this process heavily relies on smartphones for getting identified as a potential beneficiary. The e-coupons can only be accessed after signing in through your Aadhaar number. But what do people do who do not have an Aadhaar card? Hence, even though various facilities and schemes were brought into action during the lockdown, help did not reach every corner of the country. Many suffered and many even died of hunger. Thank you.
Hello everyone. We are going to discuss on topic of global level food loss on account of UN Awareness Program 2020 by Vidhi Mehta, Misbah Patel and Sakina Allah Rakhya, students from TY BSc Life Sciences. As a famous phrase by Dan Gunters, imagine walking out of a grocery store with 4 bags of groceries, dropping one in the parking lot and just not bothering to pick it up. That's essentially what we are doing, waste of food. Almost half of our food is wasted in the world. How does this happen? What can we do to solve our enormous food waste problem? Of the estimated 125 to 160 billion pounds of food that goes to waste every year, much of it is perfectly edible and nutritious. Food is lost or wasted for a variety of reasons: bad weather, processing problems, overproduction and unstable markets cause food loss long before it arrives in the grocery store, while overbuying and poor planning and confusion over labels and safety contribute to food waste at stores and in homes. According to a report by World Resources Institute, WRI, in association with Rockefeller Foundation and Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO of the UN, approximately 1/3 of the food that is produced each year goes uneaten, which amounts to 1.3 billion tons, costing the global economy over $940 billion. Significant amounts of food are lost or wasted every day in every country and at every stage in the supply chain, from the farm to the household. 1 out of every 4 food calories intended for people is not ultimately consumed by them. Apart from the cost, food loss has significant impacts on food security, environmental conservation, and climate change. There are two main kinds of wasted food: food loss and food waste. Food loss is a bigger category and incorporates any edible food that goes uneaten at any stage. Food waste is a specific piece of food loss which by the ERS or Economic Research Service defines as food discarded by retailers due to color or appearance and plate waste by the consumers. India has the second largest population in the world. In 2012, the government announced that about 22% of the Indian population live below the poverty line. According to FAO, estimates in the state of the food security and nutrition in the world 2017 report, 190.7 million people are undernourished in India. This represents 14.5% of the Indian population, which makes India the home of largest undernourished population in the world. It is estimated that saving 1/4 of the food currently lost or globally would be enough to feed 870 million hungry people in the world. According to an estimation by the UN, nearly 40% of the food produced in India is wasted or lost. A shocking new study by CIFID has revealed that 67 million tons of food is wasted every year in India, enough to feed the state of Bihar.
Food wastage in India. Food wastage in India is happening at every level, from harvesting, transporting, processing, packaging, and consuming. Wedding, events, restaurants, hotels, and houses are a major source of food wastage of cooked food. There are many organizations in the country who are working towards helping to reduce this food wastage by collecting the food and distributing it to the needy. But they're all scattered, and most of the time, the poor people in India still rely on their luck to be able to find a proper meal. Majority of food wastage in India is caused before it is packaged. This is caused due to the loopholes in the transport and infrastructure system in India. The government has looked up into this and started finding investments to develop better technology to reduce food wastage. Next is benefits of reducing food wastage. First is elevation of poverty. Post-harvest loss of crops accounts for a huge amount of food wastage in India. Avoiding this can help improve the income of farmers as they can have surplus crop which they can sell. Additionally, it also reduces the losses in the value chain, which in turn lowers the expenditures of processors, retailers, and therefore per unit of food grown or harvested. Reduction of food wastage is also required to ensure food security for the future. Second is reduction in gender disadvantage. Poverty, natural calamity, or environmental degradation are gender discriminative in nature. Considering the patriarchal nature and role of the women as caregivers and household workers, these problems affect women the most. With the loss of income that accompanies food wastage, women are often made to sacrifice on their health, education, nutrition, and other problems. By tackling food wastage, this can be addressed in a proper manner. Next is environmental factors. Reduction of food wastage can reduce the need for increasing agricultural land. This can in turn reduce deforestation, which is important in the conservation of biodiversity, combating desertification, and carbon sequestration. Reducing food wastage will also mean fewer burdens on landfills, which would prevent methane emissions. Besides, less food wastage means less food required to grow, which results in water conservation, soil conservation, and thus an opportunity for nature to heal. Next is approaches to reduce food wastage. Food redistribution. Redistribution of food or donation programs are a method for reducing both food loss and food waste. For reducing the wastage of cooked food, the government can set up a service where they can collect food from every source and set up a shelter where the hungry people can come and feed themselves for free or at a subsidized rate. This way, they do not have to hunt for hungry people who might be staying at a remote place and wouldn't get an advantage of the service if not present at a particular time, or might not come out and stay undernourished for their pride. Next, evaporative coolers. Evaporative coolers extend the shelf life of food and avoid spoilage by keeping food at lower than room temperature without having to use electricity. This low-cost, low-energy technique provides an opportunity to store perishable foods longer in the areas that lack electricity infrastructure or that has low-income farmers. Next are small metal silos. It is a simple small pit that allows grains to be kept for long periods and prevents attack from pests such as rodents, insects, and birds. These metal silos, which are intended to use by one farmer or by one household, generally hold between 250 to 1000 kgs of crops. It can be an effective strategy for reducing food loss at storage stage, especially for cereals and pulses. Insufficient storage is a major source of food loss for farmers, especially in developing countries where storage structures often do not keep harvested crops in hermetic or airtight conditions. Next are plastic crates. Using plastic crates instead of other forms of containerization has demonstrated significant reduction in food losses during handling and storage, particularly among fruits, vegetables, and other forms of fresh produce. In developing countries, 90% of food and vegetables loss occur in the handling and storage stage of the food value chain. The last is consumer awareness campaign. Consumer attitudes and behavior play a large role in determining the amount of food that is wasted in the household. Although changing the way people consume and throw out food can be difficult, communication campaigns can help influence consumer behavior at the household level.
How can citizens reduce food wastage? Yearly 67 million tons of food is wasted in our country, and on other hand, India is home to 190.7 million undernourished people, and 38.4% of children under the age of 5 in India stunted, states the United Nations. Around 21 tons of wheat in India are wasted, states the UN Food and Agriculture Organization. And India being home to the largest number of malnourished children in the world, it is almost illegal to waste this amount of food. But if the individual don't support the government and other organization, then all the efforts by them would be impractical and pointless. So as the citizens, we can eliminate such a huge amount of food by adopting the following steps. The first is serve just enough, which means we should always take a specific amount of food because there is always a second option of taking more food. In this way, we are not overeating and also the food is not contaminated. Also, example we can take as at some restaurant, the food positions tend to be large and it would be wasted if we couldn't finish them. We can order just enough as we can order more food later if needed. Second, each and every grain counts. We should always remember that it is the hard work of farmers in cultivating each grain, and because of this, today we are getting food to eat, and thus every grain matters. Third, feed animals then compose the rest. Since centuries, animals have been fed leftover food, and food recycling through animal feed offers one of the best ways to deal with the food wastage around the world. Composting food waste is easy and takes very little time. In this way, we give back fertilizers to the environment. Fourth, shop smartly and realistically. We should organize the grocery shopping and also avoid over purchasing and to measure out exactly what we need so that there is no wastage of food. Lastly, freeze to make them last. When we have excess amount of food left, we can freeze it before it gets chance to rot or go stale. Freezing food is one of the best ways to prevent waste.